Today we're talking about food addiction. Oh yeah, all that sweet, sugary, processed, demonic junk with ex-sugar addict Paige Alexander and ex-450-pounder Jamie Morgan Reno from Real Food Recovery. They're going to tell their stories from addiction to freedom and how they healed their relationship with food and how you can too. This is my conversation with Paige Alexander and Jamie Morgan Reno. So the two of you were living in different worlds, different bodies, but you described yourselves as living in the same hell. What was that hell?
Well, I can go first, Jamie, unless you want to jump in.
Go for it.
For me, I think of it as just complete obsession with the thoughts. The hell is in the mind, that it's relentless. It won't let you have peace. It won't let you rest. It's always thinking about either the next hit or the next deprivation and how to negotiate with the devil. But it's just complete preoccupation. And for me, that was the hell, and it made it hard to focus fully or be completely present in any other area of my life because I was so literally all consumed with thoughts of food and how to manage it and just how to handle the pain that I was in every second of every day.
So you were basically a sugar addict,
Oh,
but you
yeah.
weren't massive like Jamie got.
No, I could hide it. I could control it through exercise and dieting up until I hit menopause, and then things it just spun out of control. I could no longer out exercise my calories, and then that only made the hell worse because it's complete obsession, because then you are starting to gain weight. Your body is starting to change, and that was a new situation that I did not know how to manage. So, that's when I started looking into, like, plant-based sweeteners and trying my desserts that way, and that didn't always work, and it was maybe a decade or so into that where I discovered that sugar can actually be addicting and what was going on in the brain during that time and how the blood flow would shift from the frontal lobe back to the center brain with the, addiction. So it became more and more unmanageable the older I got.
Okay, well maybe we can get Jamie's perspective, experience of all that. I think she froze.
Uh-oh.
Well, that's another kind of hell, technological hell. um. Oh, okay.
Hopefully, she'll be back.
Well, let's talk about yeah. So once you hit perimenopause, you couldn't keep up with the addiction. It kind of hit you harder. So maybe let's talk about that transition and then what you did at that point.
So, I just went through it invited more dieting, right? Because I'm like, "Well, it's just a willpower problem," and all of a sudden my waist I had always had a slender waist, and now my waist was getting thicker, and I must just need to diet more and have more willpower, which invites its own set of suffering. And deprivation is miserable because that only increases the compulsion around food. And then you're actually thinking about it even more. So once it was probably mid 50s, so about the next decade or so, it was really bad. Once I was in the mid 50s, I heard someone talk about food addiction and sugar addiction, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's what it is. I think I have that." So, I was trying to have the sugar in my life and out of my life at the same time. I was trying to negotiate, how can I keep it and get rid of it at the same time? And then it finally became clear I had to get rid of it permanently in order to ever actually be at peace. I was never going to be able to manage it in moderation. It just was too I was too high on the addiction scale to moderate it, because you hear people talking about moderating. I mean, my brain lights up like a Christmas tree at the sniff of sugar. There is no place for moderation in my life. It's either on or off. And once I got it out of my life completely, the cravings go away, the brain obsession goes away, you're at peace again. You don't have to, you're not constantly, as I like to say, that the addiction is not constantly working the room. I mean, all of those things, just everything quieted down. And I was able to manage my life again where I never could before.
It sounds very difficult and extreme, but then if you think back, like if I think back on things that I could have or maybe was addicted to, say alcohol or porn or smartphones, these are common things that people use, and you think, "What? To completely cut it out? Abstinence? That sounds insane. That sounds painful. Can't you just do it sometimes?" So, when I first read in your book and then you talking about no sugar, complete abstinence, I thought, well, maybe for her, I mean, depends on the person, right? So, how much does this depend on the person?
It does. Totally. If you score very low on the Dixon spectrum, have a cookie. If you can have a cookie and that you don't think about that cookie the rest of the day or it doesn't send you into something else, go for it, man. That just wasn't an option for me. Like, I've never drank, but if I had a drink of alcohol, I'm sure I would have a drink of alcohol and then be like, yeah, I'll never think of that again. But the sugar was just my drug of choice, and so it wasn't an option for me, and I've never, ever felt restricted, by the way. I've actually only felt gratitude for being released from it. And your cravings go away too, so it's not like you're wanting it like you do when you're deep into it.
But once you like, say with alcohol, that's my, what I can relate to. You think, "Oh, well, this time will be different. I can handle this time. This time I'm not gonna fall down and lose my phone and, get in a fight or whatever happens." And then the exact same thing happens. You're blacked out, you're in trouble, and you're like, "I'm never again, never again." And it's just pure science or something. I guess the same with sugar and these processed foods that you guys are talking about.
It's totally the same. Totally the same. Once you are in the fetal position with a bellyache after a binge, you're like, "I'm never doing that again." And chances are you will.
Yeah. Anyway, Jamie's back out of technological hell, so maybe we could talk about that original question. What was your experience back when you were 420 pounds? That's how big you got, and that was just the iceberg of the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, it was over 450 at the time. And I never thought I'd be boasting about that number, but here I am. So for me, I have a very different, I might have had a similar experience back at that time. And I had a period of time where I did think that abstinence from those ingredients was the right move for me. And that's why Paige says it well. It is very different for each person, and we have different approaches to what we think recovery can look like. For me, the abstinence approach caused nothing. It was not freedom for me. It was. I might have kidded myself and thought I was free, but I wasn't, because when I would fall off the wagon, I always fell back into that stuff. So it wasn't like I wasn't thinking about it, obviously, on some level. So that was my experience. And then I realized that for the way my brain is wired, the way that I prefer to approach recovery, for me, I needed to find a way to be okay when things weren't okay that didn't include food or ingredients in processed foods that are addictive. So for me, it became less about the specific ingredient or the specific combination of ingredients into the processed or ultra processed foods. It was more about I need to learn why I'm seeking food to begin with. Why am I seeking food for a solution that food is not created to be? So for me, a very spiritual and very, just a much bigger examination of what was going on inside of me. And I had some beliefs that needed to be looked at. And before that, I had had years of shame around thinking that I couldn't have, these foods, or what was wrong with me because I couldn't stop when I ate them, or all the things that Paige mentioned. I lived it, and I had those shared experiences. But once I learned that foods are engineered to process, ultra processed foods are engineered to be addictive. And if a food is any kind of engineered, it's a processed food. Once I learned that they were engineered that way, it was very easy to say, okay, that is the problem is not me. The problem is the food. And I'm just reacting exactly the way I should be to the food. So that was very freeing for me to realize. It was very helpful for me to realize. And I was able to understand that, okay, for me, abstinence is not my final destination. My final destination is to be completely okay with it being in the world and me being in its world without, going like this to it. That felt like resistance, that felt like pushing against, that felt very hard for me. And I didn't want things to feel hard. I wanted to feel like they were flowing. And I did. I had a period of time that I was able to say, okay, abstinence feels right to me. And since then, again, this was maybe right before and during the COVID era. And then there was a time when I realized that those extreme positions for me felt like they created a lot of tension inside of me. And that tension eventually would lead to some kind of I can't have it or I don't want it. But then why every time that I give myself permission or whatever, why do I go right to it? If I really was okay with that ingredient, why am I going right to it? Every time I fall off the wagon or get stressed or feel like I want to throw in the towel or whatever it is, why am I going right back to it? Why is that the kind of ingredient that I'm looking for? So I had to look at that bigger picture understanding, not only in my brain chemistry, but my body chemistry. I needed to understand if there were nutrient imbalances, if there were other dietary imbalances, what spiritual imbalances, mental imbalances were going on. And I also needed to look at the fact that if I could understand what was happening in the micro and macro levels inside of me and how I was responding to the world around me, I might be able to make different decisions that said, you know what? I would rather not choose those ingredients because I understand how I feel. And now instead of feeling like you can't, now it's like I'm empowering myself and I'm saying I'm choosing not to because I don't want to feel like crap. And sometimes I'm going to choose to have it because I can be present, I can enjoy it, and I can connect with the experience in a way that I feel grateful for. But that did not happen overnight. Now, and again, in some circles, one might say alcoholics or folks that struggle with alcoholism, they can't do that. They can't. They once they have that one drink, the addiction is ignited inside of them, and they can't stop. And I understand those kinds of parameters for different addictions. For me, I felt like my journey with food was less about an addiction to the food and more about my attempt to manage life.
Maybe we can first just kind of zoom out and do a brief little glimpse of that big predator that's all around us, the food environment, and what are some of these foods, specific foods that we need to be wary of, and yeah, what are they doing to our body? What is sort of the basic science behind it?
Great question. So we are set up in an environment that sets us up to fail because it is everywhere. It wasn't like this, for our grandparents, but now we're living in a fast food society where things are at our fingertips. The grocery stores, Jamie, do you remember the percentage? I'm going to say, is it 60 or 80% processed food? It's high.
Oh yeah, I've heard as high as 90.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's 80, 85%, but yeah, she may be right as far as 90%. So think about it, if you're going up and down those aisles and that's all you've ever known from your earliest memory is Captain Crunch and Cheetos, that's going to be normal for you. But you know what doesn't think it's normal is your mitochondria, those little factories inside every cell that you have that's going, whoa, 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 we don't know what to do with this. And there has to be all kinds of productions happening. Cellular gymnastics has to take place in order to process those within our body. And when you eat single ingredient foods, it just goes, yeah, I recognize that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And post down, nobody has to be on alert there. So the big problem is not just the addiction for me, but also just your health in general. We're talking about cancer, we're talking about diabetes, we're talking about inflammation, we're talking about Alzheimer's. There's a slew of diseases metabolic syndrome that are associated with these ultra processed foods. It's literally killing us. Every bite of processed food increases cellular aging. Well, every bite of single ingredient food increases cellular repair, doing the job it's supposed to be doing. So it's difficult for the body to function at its maximum capacity and the most efficient if you've got a steady diet of the ultra processed food.
So yeah, again, my perspective when I look at the food environment that we're all exposed to, I think it's important for folks to be aware that we're in a super normal food environment. We are not in a food environment that is aligned or natural for our biology, physiology, psychology, all the things.
Spirituality.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not. So I think once people understand that we're living in an environment that our bodies are not designed and have not evolved to thrive in, we need to start to accept that it's not a food environment that we're in. It's a drug, a chemical environment that we're in. And it's important to kind of understand that so that we can make choices that align with our biology and chemistry and maybe spirituality if they're at that point. So I think that's the biggest thing is to remember that just because it's there, just because it's available, just because we see others doing it, eating it, maybe even perceive that they're thriving on it, does not mean that we will. And so I think it's really important for each person to find their own path forward with these in this food environment, with these foods, and with the way that they choose to feed their body.
I guess what is food addiction and why do certain people get addicted more than others?
I'll let Paige answer the food addiction question, but I'll answer the second part of it. In my experience, I think every human being in some way, shape, or form has a response to these hyper stimulating foods or chemicals, concoctions. I really believe that every human does. I have met people and been in close proximity to people who could take or leave addictive foods that they would look like they could sort of push away from the table or eat half a cookie or have a half a piece of cake or whatever, but I would notice sooner or later that they couldn't, that there might be a time where they would go back and eat it or they would talk about it more or they would go back and overeat it in the future. And I realized that again, their brains and bodies are responding exactly the way mine do. They just might have a different chemistry going on inside their body that has a different hunger and satiety cue, hunger and fullness cue around foods than mine does. So I really don't think that some people are addicted and some aren't. I think most people have addictive response to foods with addictive ingredients in them.
Okay, Paige, you have anything to add?
I was just going to make this real simple when you ask about what is food addiction. And Jamie and I interviewed Dr. Judd Brewer, who is an expert in this field, and he made it real simple. You eat in spite of consequences. That seems to be a standard, easy way to describe. If I have the one cookie, I'm going to have 10, or till I'm sick, or till they're gone. So beforehand, I'm going to have a negative outcome, but you consume in spite of consequences.
Another sort of what sounds like a simple question, but it's not. What is food? And then why do we eat food? Why should we eat food? And it sounds like what you're saying is maybe we eat food for not the reason it was sort of built for. We're eating it for other reasons, or it's doing other things.
Right. That's exactly it. If you're using food for reasons other than nutrition, you're giving food a job bigger than it was ever designed to do.
Well said.
What are some of those things it's doing beyond nutrition for us?
Comfort and numbing are generally, Jamie, would you agree with that? That the two things that people turn to using it for? I don't really know beyond that what people, entertainment, just
Distraction, entertainment, they feel like it's connection. They feel like it's some people feel like it's a spiritual thing. Some people feel like it's acceptance. I mean, it could be a myriad of things. None of those things are nutrients for life. Like any of those other words are not nutrients for life. Again, some believe in this space that those Addictive foods should never be used and abused. And some people like me are more on the side of, if you're going to use, or if you're going to use those foods, be in a place to do it mindfully, to understand why you're choosing them, what role they're playing, what the consequences of those choices are, and how you're going to move forward before, during, and after choosing that food. And if you're going to choose it, these chemically laden, highly palatable, super caloric foods, if you're going to choose it, please, for the love of all things holy, be in a place that you can be present with it, that it is in a size or a portion that is acceptable for you and your body and your goals, and that you can understand what the consequences downstream will be, good or bad, that you can live with. And that might change day to day for some people, and other people, like Paige was saying, it never changes for, it can never, it's a non-negotiable. So Paige and I approach this from these two sides of the spectrum. I've lived the whole spectrum, and I'm still living it. And I find that, again, there are some people who are free when they abstain, and that's beautiful. And there are others of us that are in chains when we abstain.
Jamie has said something spot on for me in the past, and she made the statement that when you get into these and you're high on the addiction spectrum, it takes you out of life because all you can focus on is your next hit or how you're going to manage it or how you're going to come out of this or things like that. So she's talked a lot about being present. It's difficult for someone like me specifically to even dabble in the sugar, and then I could care less about my family or my job. All I care about in that moment is how can I get more. The only desire I have is the word more. So it takes me out of life.
Yeah. Once you light up that more network, that dopamine network, you're not just going after sugar or just going after alcohol. It becomes like a more of all kinds of things. So what are some of the other addictions that you experienced amongst this food addiction? It couldn't have just been food.
The other addictions that I experienced, or behavior proclivities, if they weren't quite at that addictive level yet, for me, were all related to ways that I was seeking outside things, people, places, or situations to fulfill me in ways that I was not doing. So it might have been food because I needed that to emotionally regulate me. It might have been people because I felt like I needed to be pacified by a relationship or by an individual in my life. It might have been, shopping. It might have been anything, like I was seeking something outside of me. Media is another thing that's very common. For me, I never really struggled with, gambling or pornography or anything like that, really even shopping. But I think for a lot of people, they will seek those outlets, including food, including alcohol, and maybe even recreational drugs or other drugs. They will seek it to try to change their state. They're seeking these things outside of them to change their state, and they're overlooking or not aware, which is not a judgment, by the way. This is, I think, the beauty of recovery, is you're recovering the connection to self so that you can tune in and say, okay, I am seeking stuff outside of me to make me feel better. What's going on in here? And P.S., nothing outside of me is going to solve this. It's an internal inside job. So I think that's the crux of it, including the crux of alcoholism. And I would love to be able to hear folks in the food addiction or ultra processed food use disorder and eating disorder spaces be able to be neutral around these foods. Neutral could mean they never want to touch them again, or neutral could mean I'm going to consume them when I'm in a place that I can truly be present and understand what the consequences are. Now, with food, that may be an option. Do I think that's an option with highly concentrated forms of sugar like alcohol and ethanol and drugs? I no, I don't, because these are beyond food. These are beyond the kind of stimulus that even ultra processed food has. Alcohol is so much more stimulating, therefore addictive. Of course, drugs, even recreational, I don't care what anyone says, so much more addictive than food.
And I just want to say, Jamie summed it up so well when she said, we're trying to use these substances to solve it's an internal job. That's what we work with in recovery is let's look on what's going on the inside. What's driving you to this. What we need to work on the internal stuff so that you don't need to turn to the external to solve whatever's going on inside.
So what's going on inside of these people? I mean, all of us, or a lot of us, as you mentioned.
Yeah, all of us. Paige, do you want to take this or do you want me to jump in?
My answer is so simplistic that mine won't take long to answer, but I highly ADHD, and so I which we have now come to find out you're just naturally lower in dopamine, and I just was always looking for a hit, an upper, and if I'm bored, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And so I needed to always be hyper stimulated, or I was looking for some type of fix to calm my nerves. And taking that first bite of sugar, you just go, ah, okay, yeah, now my brain feels it. I feel it all over down to my toes. And it was it was a calming pill until it wasn't. So for me, most of the time it was boredom. That was my biggest trigger that to this day I have to manage my time very carefully or I can start jonesing. Jamie, you share your answer.
And that's the same I've heard. I live in the 12-step rooms as well in my recovery, or have lived. And that's the same thing I would hear from folks in the rooms of AA and NA, the same exact kind of description. And that they take that first sip or that first hit, and it's exactly what Paige described. I never For me, I never had that kind of response where it was from head to toe and it calmed me. For me, I could hear the bells and buzzers going off in my head, and it was a distraction, but it wasn't necessarily this panacea for me. And again, that's because everyone has different chemistry, everyone has different biology, everyone has different ways that these. That's why everyone in the world is not an alcoholic after their first drink, and many are. And there is no judgment. It's just an understanding of who is wired a certain way and what they must do to work their way through life, and how others are wired might look a little different. So I think when I would use food, it was about shame, it was about judgment, it was about embarrassment, it was definitely related to negative emotions that I didn't want to sit with. Sometimes it was about boredom, but most of the time it was something else underneath the boredom. Like, I thought it was boredom, but it was because I had a free moment and I didn't want to think about all the things that I was ashamed of from that day or whatever in life. So for me, it wasn't about boredom, because what I learned in my journey of recovery is if I can't sit alone with my thoughts, uncomfortable or not, then I am abandoning myself. So, and I would abandon myself by going to the food all the time because I wasn't sitting down and understanding what was really going on, what was really needing my attention. And the attention was never, the best kind of attention, the best kind of solution was never, a ho ho or a cupcake or whatever. That's just, it was never the answer. I thought it was, but it was just, all it was a short term, painful distraction from what needed to be addressed. And the longer I went by unaddressing or unexamining things that needed to be examined inside of me, or issues that needed to be talked about, or connections that needed to be made, or surrender that needed to happen, right? And, any of the above, the longer I went on, the more I would just go to the old standby of food because it was an easier route than looking inside or sitting there and feeling.
Jamie's word distraction, I'm like, that's it. She just said it. We for me, the sugar was a distraction from being uncomfortable.
Mhm. So I've learned in this phase of recovery in the last few years to just be comfortable with uncomfortable.
Yep. Yep, it's a skill. Huge, huge. When the demons come out, you can just say, "Okay, I'm just gonna feel you right in my chest. I'm just gonna sit here for the next 20 minutes or whatever, or wherever you are, and just I'm gonna feel the demons and just let them dissipate slowly." And you know what? I've lived every time I've done it. It's never killed me.
We're still here to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do it? Do you just do nothing, or do you do something?
Sometimes I just sit there. If I'm, like, at home on the weekend, it might be a little louder because you've got a little more downtime on the weekend, but yeah, Sometimes I'm sitting in my chair and I'm just like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, I see you. I see you, Satan. I see you. I'm going to feel it. I'm just going to feel it. Just come get me. And I'm going to feel every ounce of it. And the more that you don't resist it, it just can like pass through you and it will keep on moving. But the more you resist it and keep fighting it, it seems like it gets stronger. But if you just say, I'm just going to give into it and I'm going to feel it and know that in a few minutes it's going to lighten up, it always does.
It always does. And again, for me, there's a lot of tools that I have that I'll call on or I'll connect with. It could be, getting out of the place that I'm in, physical space that I'm in, and changing that by going outside, going for a walk, getting my time in nature. Many times it'll be going to other tools that I have around connection to others, reaching out to someone, deep breathing. I know there's plenty of people in recovery that we work with who have explored emotional freedom technique through tapping, yoga, meditation, all kinds of anything that can take you out of your head, out of your amygdala and into the frontal lobe where you can be present and make decisions that are coming from a place of calm instead of a place of alarm. Anything you could do to move that blood flow back to that frontal lobe away from the fight or flight center, that's the ticket. And the shortcut is getting out of your head, so to speak, completely and getting into your body. Because when you're in your body, meaning you're feeling what you're feeling, you're noticing what your body is sensing, you're connecting with what's happening inside the body, what sensations you're having, what things are maybe stuck, what parts of you need to be heard from, talked to. When you're able to do all that, you're fully present. And when we're present, we can't be present unless our blood flow in the brain is in that frontal lobe.
I love what you said a minute ago, Jamie. It's quelling the panic because it is a panic. Don't you think that's a good way to describe it when the demons come?
It's for me, it varies. It varies. But yes, it could be panic for me. Yeah.
It feels like an emergency for me when the cravings come on or the demons come out. It feels like an emergency. And I gotta whatever I gotta do to feed them to make them be quiet and go away. But it's that level of heightened, well, for me, panic and emergency. Very, very, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
And more generally, it might just be this thinking mind, this judging of this is good and this is bad, this is what I should do, this is what I shouldn't do, and that's a sort of there's sort of panic there because you're like, oh no, I'm stuck with this bad thing and this is not good, and it's almost like the word presence came up a bunch, and when you're present, you're just there with what is, and it's not about controlling reality. It's just oh, here it is. So it sounds like presence or stop judging things as is sort of the space where we're less likely to get snatched up by these demons.
And looking at it with, like, curiosity, just that gentle curiosity, that's interesting." That takes the panic down, right? "I'm just gonna take a look at this. I'm gonna stare it straight in the eye and just observe it and see what's going on." A lot of self-talk. That's, probably one of my number 1 tools is self-talk. "Oh, okay, this is interesting. This is happening. Well, it's you're lucky you're having it right now. That means it'll go away in a few minutes, and you won't have to deal with it again for a while. So, good. This is great. This is wonderful, and I'm gonna show what it looks like to use my tools. And isn't this a fun little game we're playing right now? And I can't wait to tell all the people in our recovery group at Real Food Recovery how I worked through it this weekend. So it's really working on maintaining the calm, self talk, and just, like you said, living in the moment.
What I liked also about your book and what you guys talk about is you mentioned this word calm quite a bit, and you just now did too. And I really like that how calm you've said is the opposite of addiction, which really simplifies it and makes it, oh, okay, let's just get to calm. And there are so many ways into it, so many pathways into calm. Maybe talk on this idea, and then we've mentioned some of the pathways, but maybe you can dig into those a little bit more.
I'll just say that one of the things that we realize is a calm brain doesn't crave. So that is the ultimate goal of anybody that's fighting probably any addiction is a calm brain. And I would love to say, here's how you do it. But just like Jamie and I have talked about, people are different as far as their addictive responses and how they handle it. It's the same way with calm. It's a series of edits, and you just have to, like Goldilocks, you just have to keep trying out different beds until you find the one that fits just right. And some things that work great for me may not work great for Jamie, and some things that work great for her may not work for me. And so you just keep seeing, practicing till you land on what is the perfect ticket. And that may change as time goes on too. We've discovered that what works today may not work tomorrow. So it's an ever evolving process. And that's why recovery is a never ending game. You have to just keep practicing. It's a practice.
That's right. Yeah. It is a never ending game. There is no finish line. You're never done. And it's important to understand that you may have options that come to you as you continue in recovery that weren't available to you at the beginning. Clarity, understanding that comes to you as you progress. And, for me, I've had to learn how to trust that that would happen and that those options and those moments of clarity would be revealed to me when I was ready to see them, because there was many years that I was not ready to see it.
And Jamie, don't you agree, or don't you feel like you are grateful that there's not an end date? I don't want to go to the finish line. I don't ever want to be there. I want to keep evolving. That's a blessing to there's no finish line.
Yeah. It's something there's also never the final answer either. You think you figured out your body, but then the seasons change, someone dies, this and that happens, you get older. And, whoa, this isn't working anymore. Now I got to go to this almost opposite thing, perhaps. But so being open to the fact that you haven't figured it out, just realize you haven't fully figured it out, but experiment with things and see what works for you, and just recognize that this might not always work forever, but let's approach life, I guess, as this experiment of not just finding calm. Sometimes we do want to get amped up, I guess, but if you're an addict, you probably got to be careful in that highly stimulatory world.
I agree with that. I do
Yeah.
agree. That high celebratory place has we've heard from our several members I've worked with that that highly celebratory place can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Well, my question is, for anyone who wants to sort of feel that amped up place, that would maybe be something to notice, to say, why does my nervous system need to have these high highs or these low lows? Why can't I, at some point you'll see like big swings right between these two places. And over time, as your nervous system heals and you find a new normal, and which by the way keeps changing, you'll notice that the gap widens, and you don't have big swings anymore. You have just eventually gentle waves, and you're not looking for those big hits of adrenaline or energy. Because once you understand what the chemical cascade in the body is, you can understand how your body gets addicted to the chemical cascade, which can be created with thoughts, it can be created with food, it can be created with alcohol, it can be created with drugs, it can be created with emotions. They're all chemical cascades. And by the way, your body looks for them, whether you're using external things or not. So you have to be, I've had to learn how to be aware of what my body was needing a hit of, so that I could learn how to outsmart it. Not outsmart it that it was wrong, but how to roll with it in a way that you work with it. Thank you. That was healthy and aligned to my goals in recovery, which very quickly were no longer about my body shape. They were very quickly about, what is happening in the big picture for me.
For example, to tack onto that, we had a member who was feeling very celebratory after a work presentation that she gave, and she could see that she had a few more of these coming up. And after it went so well, she felt like on such a high, she had done so much preparation that she just wanted to take it to the next level, and she found herself in a binge. And she's like, I can't afford for that to keep happening. And so we're like, okay, let's pre plan. What is a celebratory thing that you're going to do when you're done with your next big presentation? We're going to like plan that out in advance. I'm throwing this out there. A manicure, a massage, reading a book, or taking some quiet time. Well, you got to figure out whatever that is, but let's pre-plan that so your brain knows, okay, when I'm done with this, I'm going to look forward to XYZ, and I'm going to feel so good about it, and I really can't wait to fulfill that, and I can't wait to rewrite my story of what my recovery looks like, and I'm going to feel even better then after I execute on my plan.
And so when we're eating these single ingredient from nature real foods, yeah, we're getting off the addiction a little bit and we're improving our health, but also like Jamie was mentioning, we're getting out of that tide pool of high highs and low lows and that very volatile world. So it's going to impact other areas of our life where we're seeking these high highs and lows. So I guess it goes back to the other question earlier or comment I had about how other addictions can be connected, but it's not just addictions. It's a certain way of living your life where you're seeking these extremes. And so you get more comfortable with, oh, yeah, maybe this food is, you can call it more bland or boring or something. But I mean, it's just like a smoother ride.
And it opens up brain space to do a whole lot other stuff. I could have never written a book if I was in food. It's too distracting. That's why we have 4 main cornerstones. It's the single ingredient food, sleep, movement, and spirituality. So we feel like in order to be a well-rounded person, those are just the basics. That's just the basics. And then you've got a launching pad to create in our other 12 branches of recovery, but it's not just about the food. We are about looking holistically at the whole person so you can magnify your potential in all areas.
Yeah. And you almost said purpose there, I feel like, and that's probably a big
Yeah.
part of this too. Because when you don't have a purpose, when you don't have any meaning in your life, your job sucks, you don't have a
Totally.
relationship, you don't have nothing going on, you're some 45-year-old dude who's just, like, got nothing. You gravitate, you're more likely to gravitate towards these things. And actually the 44-year-old, I do have this friend, he is 44, he gets drunk every night, get drunk, chasing women, like, on the street, like, hey, hitting on them on the street, and that's his life. He just hits on girls in the street and gets drunk every day, and
How's
he's
it working
44
out
years
for
old.
him?
Yeah, how's that going?
No, that's what I'm saying, but, like, he doesn't have a job really, he quit that, he doesn't have a relationship, I mean, well, it makes sense, you know? I mean, but for me too, maybe if I didn't have, say, this podcast, or I didn't have, a couple of loving relationships, say, this girlfriend or this reconnecting with my brothers and sisters in a deeper way, or maybe this curiosity for learning, and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to study this or that at this moment. You need something, and if you have nothing, okay, well, food or drugs, or that's a pretty easy option. And like, what are you going to do? Nothing. You need something. You need some kind of purpose, even if it is drugs or women or whatever.
Mhm. That's one of our branches of recovery is purpose. You've gotta have a purpose. And living those 4 cornerstones helps. They're like neon signs, the big foam finger, helping you discover. Whenever you're off of those ultra processed food, it allows you to be your authentic self and discover more of who you are.
Yep, you're not distracted or filling your body with things that are meant to take away the distraction, but all they do is create more distraction and dysregulation and dysfunction.
Yeah, but finding your purpose sounds like a big project, so maybe it isn't. How can we approach this finding our purpose project in a way that's manageable and that gets us somewhere better?
I think that would be a great topic. I've got plenty of thoughts on that. I'm sure Paige does too. I think that would be a great topic for a part two because I think that's a whole other discussion.
We have a podcast coming up on that, I think, next week, Finding Your Purpose.
Well, there's the part two. I'll link that up in here. And we could do a part two as well. Yeah. So if people want to learn more or connect or any of that, you have a podcast, you have a book. Yeah, tell us where to go.
Well, if you want to find our book, it's on Amazon, Real Food Recovery. If food isn't the answer, what's the question? Our website is realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we have an online ultra processed food use disorder community where we do group coaching and help people walk them through that recovery system. And then we have a weekly podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube called Real Food Recovery.
Final question. Yeah, what does life feel like for you? What is it like now that you're out of that, what we started as a hell? Maybe you're not in heaven, but you're in some neutral space in between or somewhere above ground. What does that feel like? What's it like?
I can breathe. I can breathe. I can breathe without gripping in my chest. It's just freedom. I'll just make it simple for me.
For me, I'm feeling the spectrum of life, good, bad, and otherwise. It's yeah, it's definitely not all heaven, and it's not all hell, but I'm noticing and feeling everything that comes up as it comes up, and it's a full experience of life the way that we were created to experience it, I think.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.